Welcome to this episode of the Sovereign Life. I'm Terry Kay, and today we're going to be talking about what to do when you've blown your budget. Now, yes, I know this outfit makes it look like I haven't blown my budget, and the reason why is because I actually have a budget to focus on. One of the things I have found with having a budget versus not having a budget, it's really easy to blow your budget when you don't necessarily have one. Budgets are these personalized money plans. If you don't know what money you have coming in, what money you have going out, it's really easy for you to blow your budget, and it's really easy for you to not have the things that you need to have in life. So what we're going to be talking about today is my personal story around blowing budgets. I'm also going to be sharing with you some of my tips to make sure that you don't blow your budget and what you can possibly do if you have blown your budget. So do make sure that you do not go anywhere. If you're someone who has blown their budget before, you absolutely want to keep watching this episode.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Crimson Multimedia is a full-service video production company. We can take your next project from concept to completion. We produce small one-camera setups to complex large-scale multi-camera productions. We offer editing, visual effects, and file transfers. We also broadcast and live stream both free and pay-per-view events. Visit our website at www.crimsonmultimedia.bm for a quote or to contact us. Let Crimson Multimedia film, edit, broadcast, and stream your next event.
You're watching The Sovereign Life with Teresa Stewart on Channel 82.
Welcome back to this episode of The Sovereign Life. Today we're talking about what to do when you have blown your budget. Now I'm going to go ahead and start off by sharing my own personal story, because one thing I can say that I have learned along this journey is that some of the very best financial gurus that you've seen out there have made a ton of money mistakes, and blowing their budget is definitely one of them. Now, as someone who is really great at math back in the day in college and high school and even in primary and middle school, I always thought I would be great at managing my money. I always thought that I would always be able to figure it out financially. And unfortunately, it didn't translate that way for me. I really had to get serious around having a budget. And so one of the very first things I actually did with budgeting was saying to myself, okay, Teresa, what are some of the things you're spending your money on? Where are you going over budget? It's really easy to go over budget when you swipe your card every day. It's really easy to go over budget when you don't pay attention to the things that you're actually spending your money on. You know, when you go to the grocery store and you see that candy at the end of the aisle, you just pick it up and you add it. You say you want it now. It's something that you need in this moment, and you swipe for it and you keep it moving. A lot of the small purchases tend to add up, and that's where your budget tends to get blown. It's not usually those big purchases, because we all plan for big purchases. When we want to get a new car, when we want to get a new phone, we always plan for those big purchases. Now, sure, when you plan for those big purchases, you kind of know what money you're going to spend and where you're going to spend it. Now, those smaller purchases will always catch you out. So let's talk about what the first thing is that you can do when you've blown your budget. You need to reevaluate your budget. Blowing your budget usually comes when you have given yourself too strict limitations. You've tried to discipline yourself financially and you're not there yet. Not all of us start out doing well with managing our money. The reason why? We don't even know where to get started. We don't have the budget template that works for us. We don't know what the money plan is that's going to work for our current situation. So we tend to just create something out of thin air and pray it works. That's not how it's going to work all the time. Once you start your budget, the first thing you want to do when you reevaluate it is see, where are you going over? What are some of the things you're spending over on? Is it your housing? Is it some of those expenses that are survival expenses? If that is the case, you may need to reevaluate where you're living. Maybe you don't need to stay in that apartment anymore. Maybe you need to renegotiate your mortgage if that is an option for you. Maybe you need to add some people to your home to help with the income so that you actually get more income into your household to keep that rental expense down. Now, if it's some of these expenses that are like your thriving expenses, some of your fun expenses, then we really need to have a conversation on, is this the lifestyle that I'm going to live? If so, I need to figure out how to increase my income. Reevaluating your budget doesn't have to just stick with what you need to take out. It can also be about what you need to add in. If you do have a great job, but you want to add a little bit more income to your bucket so that you can kind of fit your lifestyle to be what you want it to be so that you can live your very best life, that's something that you need to think about when you're reevaluating your budget. Don't think about reevaluating your budget as something that it's the worst thing that can happen to you. It's not. Life happens. We all change. There are so many different things that are going to come towards us every single day, and they are going to possibly have us changing and shifting the way we manage our money. And it's okay. It's absolutely okay to reevaluate your budget. I'm going to reiterate that because I want you to understand that it is not the end of the world that you've had to reevaluate your budget. It's not. I understand that there is like a little bit of anxiety that may come with reevaluating your budget. There's a little bit of unease that comes with reevaluating your budget because when you create your budget, you really think that this is going to be the plan for the month and I'm going to get it all under manners this month. I get that because that has been me. I am here to tell you it does not always work out that way. Just because you plan something at the beginning of January, by the 15th of January, it could absolutely be completely different. And by the 31st of January, you might realize that that budget just wasn't the budget for me this month. And that is okay. And it's time for you to just look back, take a minute and see where you need to make shifts. I understand that when we are making shifts, we tend to get down on ourselves. When you do these reevaluations, give yourself grace. Honor the fact that not everyone had the tools when they were coming up to be experts at their money plan. And it's okay. If you're learning as you're doing, hi, I too am someone who is learning as I'm doing. It's not a science that we're all going to master in a day. You need to recognize that just because you're reevaluating your budget today, it doesn't mean that tomorrow you can't do it again. It doesn't mean that a month from now you can't do it again. When you've blown your budget, the first thing you need to do is reevaluate your budget. Because if you don't, you're going to just keep kicking the can. You're just going to keep going down that road and you're going to find yourself putting yourself into situations that financially you might not be able to get out of, and you might also create some crises for yourself. You might put yourself in a situation where you have to make a decision that is not a decision you want to make in your life nor in your finances. So whenever you have blown your budget, just take a moment to reevaluate it and figure out what's going to work for you. Now, there are going to be times when you may need to pull in some resources. You may need to have a conversation with your significant other. Maybe it's members of your family, or maybe it's even just your friends. You might just need to maybe talk to some other people to kind of say to them, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what I'm trying to do, and I can't seem to get it to work for me. It could just be as simple as having that conversation with someone that puts you at ease, where they say to you, I've been there, I've done that, here's what worked for me, and you might find some things that will work for you. You might also hear from them and realize that that's not going to work for you because you have a lifestyle that you want to lead that may be different from theirs. Another thing you want to keep in mind when you're reevaluating your budget is your lifestyle. How are you living? Some of us can live a very minimal life and be quite comfortable, happy, and living our best lives. Some of us also like to live a very extravagant life. We like to show out, and not in a boastful way, but we like to show that we have been able to do really well with our finances up until this point, and we're celebrating that, and that too is okay. A lot of us also like to do things like invest in the stock market. We like to travel. We like to invest in our appearance, and that too is okay. But knowing what type of lifestyle you have is going to be very important, because if you are just trying to live life by the skin of your teeth and just praying that your finances will sort themselves out on their own, that is a pretty chaotic and not very wise when it comes to your money. You want to make sure that every decision that you make is a decision worth making. Now, I get it. That sounds easy. Easier said than done, Teresa. I get it. I've been there. I know what it feels like to have all of these great ideas when it comes to my finances, and then seeing myself blow my budget and then just feeling defeated. Feeling like this is the end of the world. Like, how am I going to come back from this? it's just too much for me. When you feel those moments, honor those feelings. It's okay to be a little bit upset with yourself. But as I mentioned earlier, give yourself grace, because there is no right or wrong way to do this. There are a lot of rule books out there. There are a lot of gurus and a lot of guides that will tell you what has worked for them, what systems are great for them. And as well-meaning as they are, not everything will work for everyone, and that too is okay. You need to be confident enough to take charge of your life and figure out what is going to work for you. And if the budget that you set for yourself last month is not the budget that's going to work for you this month, that is okay. Figure out what you need to change. Maybe you need to say that I am no longer going to go out for the next month. I'm going to not eat out anymore, and I'm just going to see how much I can save in that particular category to, maybe funnel that money towards something else. Maybe there's something else I want to do more of in my life, or maybe there's a debt that I want to get down. And in order to get that down, I need to cut out some of the expenses that are just not necessary expenses. They're not expenses that I need in order to live my life. They're things that I want to do. They're things I want to do because other people are doing them. And it's totally fine to be peer pressured by your friends without necessarily them saying anything to you, because we are human beings. We love to compare ourselves to other people's, and it's not a bad thing to compare yourself to someone else. It is the nature of being a human, but what you don't want to do is find yourself comparing yourself to other people to try to keep up with the Joneses, because the Joneses are not watching you. The Joneses are watching their own money, and they're making sure that they're okay. So I hope that you understand that the very first thing that you need to do when you've blown your budget is to reevaluate it. We'll be back after this commercial break to go into the second tip that I have for you when you've blown your budget.
We'll be right back after these messages. You're watching The Sovereign Life with Teresa Stewart on Channel 82.
Welcome back to this episode of The Sovereign Life. Today we are talking about what to do when you've blown your budget. Now, if you're just joining us, the first tip you need to do is reevaluate your budget. If you have ever blown your budget like I have, it's definitely time for you to just take a pause and take a step back and reevaluate where you spent your money previously and figure out what changes you need to make going forward so that you don't blow your budget again. Now, the second tip I have for you when you have blown your budget and how you can kind of find your way back to a steady state, you want to stop using credit cards. Do not create any new debt for yourself. I repeat, do not create any new debt for yourself. When you are finding yourself trying to fill in those money gaps because, you've blown your budget and now you're trying to use your credit card to kind of offset some of those expenses that you kind of still want to pay out, but you don't have the money to pay out, you are now creating a really slippery slope for yourself financially. And it's not a place that you want to be in, because it's very difficult to get out of debt when you've kind of dug yourself into a hole. And it's sure, when it's a small hole, $500 sounds like, oh, that's not too bad. And then it easily creeps up to $750. And then before you know it, you're over $1,000. And then before you blink again, you're now at $2,000. As quickly as I said that is as quickly as that debt can grow. And you don't want to put yourself in that position, because now not only have you blown your budget from a cash perspective, but now you've blown your budget in trying to get yourself out of debt, because you're going to have to now find where you're going to put that money towards. Putting money towards things like your debt is probably the very first thing you should do if you have debt. So if you've blown your budget previously and you're using your credit card to now offset some of those money gaps, when you reevaluate your budget, the very first thing you need to do after you've taken care of your basic survival needs is put money towards paying down your debt. I don't care if it's $25. Put $25 towards paying down your debt every single month, and that's what you're going to do. Because what you're going to find is, even though it'll take you a little while, it's a snowball of an effect, you will be able to pay down that debt much faster than if you were to just continue to blow your budget and use your credit card to fill in those money gaps. Now, credit cards are definitely set up in such a way that they actually spiral out of control really, really fast. That's because they are charging you for the balances that you carry over. And that's why it's important to make sure that there is an expense in your budget after you've already blown it and you reevaluated it and you're recognizing that you've used your credit card to fill in some of those money gaps. You need to have a line that is specifically for paying down your credit card. Now, I understand that there are going to be times when you just can't avoid using your credit card to pay off something. I get it. There might be a medical emergency that comes up. There might be someone that hits your car and now you need to get some repairs done to your car and you may need to use your credit card or some line of credit in order to pay that off. And as much as I would try to recommend highly that you don't do that, I understand that it's inevitable in some cases. And when that is the case for you, take time to let that be the only charge. Do not then find yourself trying to continuously pay off something using your credit card because you know it's an option for you. Just because it's an option doesn't necessarily mean you need to take that option. You can absolutely just cut off using your credit card. Don't use it after that one financial crisis or one financial emergency has been taken care of. Let that be the only time that you use that credit card. Because what you're going to find is you're going to create so much new debt for yourself that you're going to financially stress yourself out, knowing that you've already blown your budget. Blowing your budget and then creating this new set of debt, it's two negatives that you don't want into your life. You at least just want to have blown your budget, because we can always reevaluate our budget and fix our expenses so that we're not spending on things that we don't need to spend on. But once you've added debt to the conversation, you now have to get real strategic and very disciplined. And if you're someone who doesn't really deal well with discipline, maybe you don't like some of these rules that are set out there. Maybe authority figures make you feel upset. All of these things are going to come into play if you are using credit to pay off some of your money gaps. So as much as you can, avoid credit cards where possible. Now, we now have a situation where we've used our credit card to fill in some of our money gaps. And now we have this $500 debt that we didn't account for. So what do we do now? You're probably asking me, Terry, okay, sis, I am someone who has used her credit card or his credit card to pay off a debt, and now I need to get myself out of this situation. So as I mentioned, you want to make sure that you have a line item on your budget to pay off your debt. Whatever the bare minimum is that you can pay, put that down, and that's what you're committing to every single month. And after you have reevaluated your budget and pulled out some expenses that you don't necessarily need, then we can talk about putting that extra money towards your credit card. Now, when you put some extra money towards your credit card, what you're going to see is that debt number go down. So we're going to get from, let's say we can only do $25 a month. That's like, we can comfortably pay $25 a month towards our credit card debt. Once we get ourselves down to $475, and maybe we find that we have an extra $50 this month, and we put that towards our credit card. So now we've gone from paying just $25, we've added $50 to that. So now we're down to $425, and we still are going to pay $25 towards our credit card debt as well. So now we've put ourselves at $400 within this first month. We're going to get charged a financial fee because we're still carrying a balance over, but we're not ignoring the fact that we have a piece of debt that we need to take care of. You need to do that at the bare minimum to get yourself started. And every single time you get an extra piece of cash, whether it's birthday money, whether someone just gave you $20 because you're a great person, maybe you found $2 on the floor, every single time you get extra money, put that towards your credit card debt, because your budget's already been blown and now you've created this new debt for yourself. But in order for you to get out of this debt, you need to reallocate your resources. And a lot of folks don't necessarily use that type of term when they're talking about their money, but your money is a resource to you. It's something that you need to be very conscious of using. Don't just use it frivolously because you can. Be resourceful with it, be wise with it, because it's going to help you out in the long run. It's not going to help itself out. Money is just there. The resources are going to be there for you. It's not trying to make itself better. It's trying to make your life better. And if you just blow it and give it away to anything that's not necessarily something that you need to give it away to, you're going to find yourself back to blowing your budget all over again because you didn't plan to take care of some of your simple financial expenses early on in the month and even mid-month and even at the end of the month. So make sure anytime you find yourself in a financial situation and you're maybe trying to bail yourself out, as much as you can, avoid to use credit cards. If you must use a credit card, there's only one shot. You got one shot to use your credit card to pay off a financial emergency. And after that, we're done. We're not using it again, because now we have to, like I said, reevaluate our budget to figure out how this is going to work for us in the long term. And even how long are we going to actually carry this debt? We don't want to carry that forever. $500 debt, we don't want that to carry beyond a month if we could, but it will probably get us to 3 to 6 months before we can actually pay that down. And so if that is the plan that we're now working into our budget, we need to account for that. So if we can no longer go out with our friends to happy hours on Fridays, that's done. If we can't call a food delivery service to send us food because we don't feel like cooking tonight, that's also done, because these are smaller expenses that, although they don't make us feel uncomfortable when we're paying for that happy hour night out, or we're just ordering the food because I don't feel like cooking tonight. Those $50 here and there don't seem like much in those moments, because it was just $50. That's fine. But imagine what you could do if you chose not to spend $50 on food delivery and put that towards your debt. You would see your debt being paid off much faster, and then feel more confident about the way you're managing your money, and be at ease and have peace of mind in your finances, because you would know that you have been able to successfully pay down a debt and get your budget back on track. So with that tip, I do want to remind you, make sure as often as you can, do not use a credit card to bail yourself out if you've blown your budget. Make sure you reevaluate that budget once you've blown it, and everything will definitely work out for you in the end. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with my third and final tip on what to do when you've blown your budget. So make sure you do not go anywhere.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Crimson Multimedia is a full-service video production company. We can take your next project from concept to completion. We produce small one-camera setups to complex large-scale multi-camera productions. We offer editing, visual effects, and file transfers. We also broadcast and live stream both free and pay-per-view events. Visit our website at www.crimsonmultimedia.bm for a quote or to contact us. Let Crimson Multimedia film, edit, broadcast, and stream your next event.
You're watching The Sovereign Life with Teresa Stewart on Channel 80 Tip.
Welcome back to this episode of The Sovereign Life. Today, we have been talking about what to do when you've blown your budget. The very first thing you need to do when that happens is actually reevaluate your budget. You need to see where in your money plan you need to make some shifts, and it's okay if you have to make those shifts. Many of us find ourselves having to reevaluate our budgets multiple times in the year and as our life changes. The second thing you need to do is try your best not to use a credit card to fill in any money gaps. As tempting as it may be to use your credit card to kind of fill in some of those gaps that you have, it will create another financial situation for you that you don't want to find yourself in, because debt is probably one of the hardest things for you to pay down, no matter how well-intentioned you are as a person. Now, the third thing that we're going to be talking about today, this is the final thing that you can do when you have blown your budget, and that is to reassess your budget based on your new patterns. Now, you may be finding yourself moving from being in a relationship to not in a relationship. You might find that you once had 2 incomes coming in. Now you only have 1. And the reason why you blew that budget is because you were still spending as if you had 2 incomes instead of the 1. And when that happens, you need to just start your budget over. There's no point in trying to now recreate your life based on those 2 incomes that you have, because that second income isn't here anymore. So you need to start a brand new budget. You need to look and see what actual income you have coming in. That income that you have coming in is important for you to know at the beginning of you creating that budget. Don't just assume that the single income that you have you can actually get it up to being the 2 incomes, because that might not happen for you. And if it doesn't happen for you, you've now literally set yourself up to fail. And failing financially is not something that we want to do when we know what to do in order to be better. When we're making our financial decisions, every single time we make them, we need to tie it back to whatever budget we've set for ourselves. Whatever goal we have in mind that we want to actually achieve, the budget is literally created as a plan to help you get there. Your budget will never keep you restricted if you do it properly. If you create your budget and you tailor it based on your current lifestyle, it will always work for you. Blowing your budget right after you've recreated is generally something that's going to happen because it's the first time you're using it. This is the first time you are now creating your new life and actually spending your money based on this new plan. It is quite okay to give yourself grace once again after you've created this new budget and you're finding that, okay, what I thought was going to work for me financially is actually not working for me. That is okay. It's also important to highlight what those new patterns are. Like, what is it that's new that's come into your life that you are actually now having to budget for? It's really easy for us to kind of skirt past some of those things that have always kind of been in as a part of our budget because we've always seen them. Highlight those new things and pay close attention and be more aware of when you're spending in those spaces so that you don't find yourself putting things on autopilot without actually having a sense of, okay, what am I actually spending on this new pattern? What is actually new in my life that I'm spending this money on? The reason why it's important to be aware of that is because as easy as it can be to spend, it's very easy for us to forget about the spending once it's gone. And when you're not tracking where you're spending your money, whether it's new things or old things that are in your budget, you will every single time fail and blow that budget. Blowing your budget is not the best thing for you at any stage in your life. You don't want to find yourself blowing your budget for the sake of blowing your budget. And it's because you have this new lifestyle. There's new things in your life that you didn't necessarily plan for properly, or you assumed that because you were great at your old budget, you'll be great at this new budget. Give yourself time. Give yourself 3 to 6 months to kind of figure out this new budget. Give yourself time to kind of see when things are actually going for you in the right way and when they're going for you in the wrong way. What usually happens when you start that new budget, you kind of are super motivated. You are super ready to go. You are like, yes, I am going to slay this budget. I am going to make sure that every single category is coming under. And then life happens and a few of those categories go a little bit over and you finding yourself asking, well, how did I get here? Like, I just created this budget. It's super new. Like, there's no bad habits that should be attached to this budget. And the bad habit is probably in your mind. It's that fact that you are assuming or you're dealing with your new budget the way you dealt with your old budget. And that simply doesn't make sense. I don't want to tell you that it's going to be all a stream of roses. You're just going to walk through and everything's going to be great. And just because you did it the first time right, the second time right, and the third time was the charm, you got it right, so you're thinking that you're good for the rest of the year, always be cautious of yourself because as confident as we all like to be when it comes to our finances, sometimes we are our worst enemy. Sometimes because we've done something new, we think, oh, it's going to be great because I am a new person. I am new when it comes to this budget, so I'm going to be able to take care of myself under these new goals, under this new guidelines that I have for myself. And that can sometimes be a false sense of security for us because we've created this new budget and now we believe that because it's a new budget, I, as a new person, will be able to make sure everything is okay. And as well-meaning as we are as human beings, we often can find ourselves tripping ourselves up because we think that we have got it all together and we're not actively being aware of what's going on in our finances. So as often as you can, take a check-in, check back with yourself and make sure that the budget that you set for yourself, that you've recreated based on your new lifestyle and your new patterns and your new habits, it's actually one that is still working for you. So whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, make sure you do that consistently. Don't wait till the next month to start looking back at your finances. When you've blown your budget, it can definitely feel like the worst thing ever, but it's not. Just make sure you keep these 3 tips in mind. Make sure you reevaluate your budget when you've blown it. Make sure you do not use a credit card to fill in any money gaps. And when you have a new lifestyle change, make sure you recreate that budget and start from scratch because I promise you, you will thank me and yourself later when it all works out for you in the end. This episode of The Sovereign Life was all about what to do when you've blown your budget. If you enjoyed it, do make sure you share it with someone, and I will see you on the next one.
You've been watching The Sovereign Life. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching.
This Black History Moment is courtesy of Ashe University in collaboration with Channel 82, with Nwalimu Melody Mishere dropping the knowledge. I was the first woman to rule a major empire. I reigned for 33 peaceful years, developing our economy with expanded trade routes and restoring important buildings and monuments. Though I made no war with my neighbors, I did fight the sexism of my day. In order to get respect for my accomplishments, I had to insist on being addressed as Pharaoh. I even wore a false beard. Who am I? Where did I reign? I am Hatshepsut, and I reigned in Kemet, ancient Egypt.
Did you know that helmets create an additional layer of protection for your head? A helmet's aim is to reduce the risk of serious head and brain injuries by reducing the impact of a force or collision to the head. This message is brought to you by the Bermuda Road Safety Council.
Hotep. Hotep is a greeting that means peace in the ancient Kemetic language, and Mwalimu means teacher in Kiswahili and is equivalent to the English word professor. My name is Mwalimu Melody Michere Van Putten, and this is Mwalimu Dropping the Knowledge. Today, we are continuing our journey into knowledge, this time focusing on what I call the culture keepers. Culture keepers have their roots in the tradition of the griots, an ancient and valued profession of an oral historian. Griots kept the history, culture, and traditions of the people, whether in a village or an empire. Modern-day culture keepers preserve cultural traditions, keeping them alive, whether they're in the oral tradition, written word, or today's various media platforms. In this episode of Mwalimu Dropping the Knowledge, I am highlighting 3 of Bermuda's iconic culture keepers, Nellie Eileen Musson, Cyril Outerbridge Packwood, and Ira Pierman Phillip. But first, a poem, The Wisdom, from my book, I Poet. The wisdom of our people is completely knowable. We must simply read and study to extract its valuable truths. The wisdom of our people is completely accessible, but we must take the time to think on it, meditate, and internalize the knowing. Seba to Sia, Sia to Vision, Vision to Heka. The wisdom of our people is in us, waiting